Started here, so colleagues, if I could have your attention, particularly my honourable colleagues from the NDP and from the Bloc. Colleagues, we're going to get started. You're in trouble, yes. So colleagues, order please, if I could. I need to be able to hear myself think, and we're a little bit behind time. So pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, October 2024, the committee is resuming its study of intergenerational transfer of farms and new entrants. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being very patient. I apologize. We had 4 votes in the House, so those obviously have to take precedent, and we're a little bit behind schedule. But here's how we're going to handle things today. We have, I believe, 7 witnesses between 2 panels. We're going to handle and basically do one major panel. We're going to allow everyone to provide their opening statement, and then we're essentially going to do 3 rounds of questioning. So it'll be our normal 2, and then 5 minutes to the Conservatives, 5 minutes to the Liberals. That should put us just shortly around 6:15, and it'll be a little bit truncated, but it's the best we can do in the circumstances, and we want to be mindful of our time of our witnesses. So the only other thing that I need from you, according to my clerk, is we do have Mr. McGregor and Mr. Epp, who are going to be joining on a more kind of, I'll say substitution, but on a more permanent basis up until Christmas. Apparently we need to get some type of motion from the committee to give them access to the digital binder and distribution list. So I'm sure that won't be a problem unless we really want to punish them. But no, I'm not seeing any issue. I'll take that way. Okay, colleagues, with us today from the Canadian Cattle Association, Jack Schaff, and also Ryder Lee. From the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture, Alan Melvin. From the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Coralie Foster, who's also a partner at BDO Canada, avec les unions des producteurs agricoles.
With the Union of Farming Producers, Sir Caron, David Tougas, coordinator for Economy and Commerce, and Mark St. Roch, the coordinator, Accounting and Taxation Coordinator, Research and Agricultural Policy Directorate, also by video conference. We also have the Fédération de la Relève Agricole du Québec, so David Beauvais, who's the president, and Véronique Simard-Brochu, the executive director.
We have Mo Graham joining us here in the room, so great to have you. And from La Terre, Centre de référence en agriculture et
From Arter, Centre de référence en agriculture et en agroalimentaire du Québec, Louis Dionne.
Being here, and I'm going to start with the Canadian Cattle Association, up to 5 minutes. We're going to go rapid fire. Go ahead, Mr. Schaff.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of the Canadian Cattle Association, CCA, in your study on intergenerational farms and new entries. My name is Jack Chafe. I'm co-chair of CCA's Domestic Ag Committee and past president of Beef Farmers of Ontario. Along with my family, I own and operate a beef feedlot in southwestern Ontario. Today I'm joined by my colleague Ryder Lee, which is online, General Manager of the Canadian Cattle Association, and also as an observer in the back, I have along my son here, who is lobbying on behalf of the National Cattle Feeders today in their lobby day. CCA is a national organization representing Canada's 60,000 beef producers. The Canadian beef industry is a significant driver and economic and global leader in sustainability, contributing to $21.8 billion to Canada's GDP, supporting approximately 350,000 full-time equivalent jobs. A prosperous and thriving beef industry generates considerably economic, environment, and social opportunities and benefits for Canada. CCA has been extensively engaged in discussions on the intergenerational farm transfers and succession planning for several years through advocacy and on Bill C-208 and its amendment in several budgets since. I would like to begin by emphasizing the smooth intergenerational transfers on beef operations within farming families is critical to maintaining the sector's reputation as major contributors to the global and domestic food security. However, CCA is concerned with recent changes to the capital gains measures as announced in the budget 2024 will increase the required of sell-off pieces of farms with these changes. The federal government needs to ensure that this does not happen or jeopardize the current tax policies that allow continuing of the intergenerational transfers between beef operations within families. These include mechanisms such as the employment, ownership trusts, and small business corporation shares. We emphasize and concerned about the lack of meaningful consultation time in advance of this announcement in the budget. Beef producers did not have time to analyze the changes and impact on their family operations. It is important that government recognize the undue consequences of each operation, so it is difficult to quantify the changes of the sector within proper consultation time. We also have concerns about the impacts of the inclusion rate despite the changes announced on August 12th. While we are pleased to see the changes of lifetime exemptions and other amendments to the measurements are counter to the announcements in Bill 208 and at the amendments in the budget of 2023. By increasing the capital gains inclusion rate, the federal government risks weakening the provisions under C-208 that facilitate smooth intergenerational farm transfers to the younger producers. The majority of Canadian cattle farms operate under family-run businesses. Each farm has its own unique operational structures. To address the vast differences between those structures, producers need a greater clarity regarding the changes between August 12th and those announced in the budget 2024. As our sector continues to adopt and create new business structures, such as those where aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews are now working together, we need to ensure that these new structures are realized and reflect the government tax policy when it comes to succession planning. By recognizing these new realities, the government can demonstrate in its meetings of expectations of our sector and not jeopardize the existing exemptions. At a time when we need all tools to dispose of streamline of assets to that next generation. To close, our sector is at risk of losing significant portion of the workforce as farmers may retire without a viable succession plan. This also places Canada's rural economics at risk of decline. We need to ensure government policies do not unintentionally contribute to the decline in agricultural production in Canada. I'd like to thank you for having me appear and look forward to answering questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn to no stranger to King's Ants, Mr. Alan Melvin, President of the Federation of Agriculture in Nova Scotia. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to appear today to discuss the intergenerational transfer of farms and new entrants. My name is Alan Melvin, President of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture and a sixth-generation vegetable farmer based in the Annapolis Valley. Since 1895, the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture has represented Nova Scotia farmers covering more than 90% of the province's agricultural production. The challenges surrounding intergenerational transfer and attracting new entrants are significant in Nova Scotia. Our province is home to rich, productive agricultural lands that have been sustainably farmed, protected, and improved over generations. Maintaining and expanding our food production depends on the ability of the next generation to take up and continue this work. Unfortunately, our industry does not feel prepared for this transition. The average age of a farmer in Nova Scotia is almost 59, the highest average in Canada, and 62% of farms report a need to transition within the next decade. Over the winter of 2024, the NSFA conducted a survey among members to gauge the state of succession planning. The results were concerning, with only 8% of farmers currently having a detailed succession plan in place. Succession challenges in agriculture create unique vulnerabilities with potential impacts on rural economies and food security. Addressing these challenges is not about finding one solution, but will require a multifaceted approach that requires innovative thinking and collaboration with industry. Supporting these transitions is increasingly urgent as the agriculture industry faces uncertainty in attracting new entrants. In Nova Scotia, the NSFA has been calling for the return of a land bank program, which would support both farm transitions and new entrants. Land banks are designed to support economic growth by providing flexible financing options and connecting aspiring farmers to farmland. This can be part of the solution to allow farmers to retire with dignity and enable the successful entry of the next generation. The financial barriers to entry in farming have become a critical issue. Between 2010 and 2023, the average value of farmland in Nova Scotia has more than doubled, from $1,663 per acre to $3,912 per acre, with some of our most productive land reaching up to $20,000 per acre. Prices are continuing to be driven up by development pressures and a trend towards land being used as an investment vehicle. This rise has made it increasingly difficult for aspiring farmers to afford land. Many families face situations where children have pursued different careers, leaving farms without a successor. For these farms, finding a successor is not just a matter of business, it is about maintaining the economic capacity and vibrancy of rural communities. Another significant barrier for new entrants is the lack of adequate business risk management programs. Today's new farmers must contend with much higher debt loads earlier in their careers, and this challenge is compounded by increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. Our current business risk management programs under SCAP do not meet the needs of modern farming. These programs do not provide sufficient financial stability to offset the risks associated with a changing climate, and these programs particularly struggle to meet the needs of Nova Scotia's farms that are diverse in size and often produce multiple commodities. The frequency and severity of extreme weather events, from hurricanes like Fiona to unprecedented summer rainfalls causing significant floods, have added to the stress of operating a farm. For many young farmers, the prospect of entering such a volatile industry without a strong risk management is daunting. The lack of comprehensive support means many will not consider farming as a viable career path. Improved business risk management is critical for those new entrants who are carrying significant debt loads to acquire their farms. Another area of concern is the rising tax burden on farms. Taxes can impact the day-to-day operations, succession planning, and overall financial health in ways that few other costs do. The Budget 2024 changes to capital gains that came into effect in June have created complications for farmers who are actively involved in the succession planning process. Farm transitions require years of planning involving legal, financial, and family considerations. With 62% of farms in Nova Scotia set to transition or retire in the next decade, this sudden shift adds another layer of difficulty to the industry's efforts to find new entrants and maintain the rural fabric and resilience that comes with family farming traditions. In closing, I would like to thank the committee for inviting us here to discuss these issues. The intergenerational transfer of farms and the need to attract new entrants are critical challenges facing our industry. As we work towards solutions, it is essential that we address these barriers to ensure that Nova Scotia's agricultural future remains strong and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melvin. We'll now turn to Ms. Foster for up to 5 minutes, please.
My name is Coralie Foster, and I'm also from Mitchell, which is in southern Ontario. I'm here today to bring two perspectives to the committee. I'm a partner with BDO, a national public accounting firm with offices in rural areas across Canada. I'm also part of the leadership of BDO's National Agriculture Industry Group. My own client base in Mitchell is comprised primarily of farmers and agribusinesses producing a variety of commodities. They range from small producers to large operators, but what they all have in common is that they are family farms. I also bring personal experience as well. My family operates an 1,100-acre cash crop farm, which we successfully transitioned from my husband's parents to us. Our two adult sons represent the seventh generation to farm in Perth County, both within our existing operation and through their own ventures. We always structured our operations with a future transition in mind, should they choose to farm. We anticipate completing this transition over the next decade. The meeting your committee had last week focused heavily on the capital gains rules. I don't want to delve into the technical details of tax policy, but I do want to express our industry's concern over the complexity and unpredictability of tax changes. I've been in public accounting for over 30 years, and each year the Income Tax Act has become increasingly complex and burdensome. Our firm has a dedicated team specializing in tax reorganizations and succession planning. This specialization is necessary due to the rapid pace of regulatory changes and the complexity of the legislation. Smaller practitioners often seek expertise from firms like ours because the regulatory environment is so challenging. There is significant demand for succession planning across the country, but not enough qualified accountants to meet this need. This situation risks non-compliance or succession planning being done only in crises or after a death, and that rarely achieves the desired outcome. Numerous tax changes have been proposed and subsequently amended, causing significant uncertainty and frustration for farmers and their advisors trying to plan. Examples include the private corporation proposals, specified corporate income, Bill C-208, underused housing tax, and trust reporting. The proposed capital gains changes from spring remain draft legislation. These issues cause upheaval and necessitate quick and often inefficient responses. Accounting firms spend considerable time understanding these changes, educating staff and clients, and implementing plans that ideally should be executed over several years, not just a few months. Planning is challenging without the stability of the rules. There are many skilled accountants and firms across Canada who have dedicated their careers to farm tax and would welcome the opportunity to be consulted on proposed changes to identify concerns in advance. In addition to the unpredictability and complexity of income tax legislation, there are two specific areas where changes could be beneficial based on what I see in my practice. Firstly, extending the favorable intergenerational rollover provisions to apply to transfers to nieces and nephews in the same manner as they do to children. And secondly, providing more options to transition from one farm operation to another without triggering a large tax burden. Expanding the existing replacement property rules to allow farmers to exchange land, all farm and agribusiness buildings, and quota more flexibly could create more opportunities for the next generation to bring new income streams. However, I do believe there are other impediments to farms' transition beyond tax measures that government policy could address. The first is around financing. The cost of capital required to farm is significant. Fortunately, with intergenerational transfers, the debt is often partially funded with promissory notes held by parents, but this is usually the only way for the transaction to be financially feasible. Working capital presents a bigger challenge to new farmers. The amount of interest-free advances under the current advance payment program has fluctuated. Enhancing this program for new farmers to maintain a higher limit permanently or to provide other incentives could make it more accessible. Education is another area. Farm kids often excel at operating equipment and handling barn chores from a very young age, but frequently lack administrative, human resource, accounting, and management skills. As farms grow more complex and larger, new owners need to be more adept. Funding for a wide range of existing, not necessarily government-created courses could help. And finally, farm programs. Agri-Invest in its current form does not provide a significant source of funding for farm operations. Agri-stability is unpredictable. In general, the programs could be more meaningful and simplified for the whole industry in order to be more beneficial to new farmers. And finally, under a previous version of the Growing Forward program, funding was available to cover a portion of the costs for succession planning. While it may not have prompted clients to undertake the work they weren't already planning, it did encourage some to do so sooner and more thoroughly. I thank you for this opportunity today.
Thank you very much. Maintenant, UPA, s'il vous plaît, peut-être Monsieur Caron.
Now on to the Union des Producteurs Agricoles. Maybe Mr. Caron, you have 5 minutes rather. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Martin Caron. I am a dairy producer, and I'm a dairy and field crop producer in Louisville, Mauricie, and a general president of the Union des Producteurs Agricoles, which represents 42,000 agricultural producers in Quebec. The agricultural sector is important to our economy, generating around 7% of Canada's GDP. However, the decline in the number of farms in Canada is worrying. Between 2011 and 2021, Canada lost 8% of its farms. That's nearly 15,856 fewer businesses. This situation is all the more alarming given that only a small proportion of farm businesses have a succession plan. Only 22% of businesses have a succession plan, and of these, 8.5% have a written plan. Given this context, if we wish to preserve the Quebec family farming model, it is imperative to reflect on this important issue and encourage succession, whether related or unrelated, to the family. In a context where the average age of farmers continues to rise, the proportion of farmers aged 55 and over rose from 48% in 2011 to 61% in 2021. And without adequate preparation for intergenerational transfer, farms risk being absorbed by larger, more centralized infrastructure. Maintaining the diversity of agricultural models is essential to ensure resilient and sustainable food production. Small and medium-sized farms play a vital role in the economic, social, and environmental balance of our regions. Their disappearance would result in a significant loss of this diversity, a standardization of production, and an erosion of the economic autonomy of many rural communities. This centralization, while profitable in the short term, weakens our rural regions and compromises the country's food resilience. In addition, young people wishing to enter farming face considerable financial and land barriers. Their ability to acquire land and equipment is limited by high costs and fierce competition with larger, better financed entities. To encourage the transfer of farms and the integration of new producers, a number of solutions need to be put in place. Here are a few proposals. A number of tax rules, for example, have been adjusted in recent years to improve the conditions under which farm businesses are transferred, including the possibility for family succession to finance the retirement of parents, and allowing parents to use their lifetime capital gains exemption. However, extended family farms deserve special attention. Tax incentives could facilitate the transfer of these farms, notably by allowing the tax-free transfer of farm assets to a nephew or niece who will continue to run the business in order to keep these operations within a family framework. In every province, agricultural trusts are currently being set up. This new mechanism secures access to farmland for producers without them having to buy it, instead letting the farm trust acquire the property and lease it back to them on a long-term basis. At the same time, the agricultural vocation of the land purchased is preserved, since the trust does not seek to resell its properties, but aims to continue leasing with agricultural relief organizations for as long as possible. These organizations will have at their disposal land banks that will help new businesses, thus contributing to increasing the country's food security. These organizations are registered with the Canada Revenue Agency as charities. Another recommendation. Like education saving plans, similar schemes could encourage farmers to save for the transfer of their farm. This would reduce the financial pressure on the buyer, who would then have less to pay. The farmer could contribute to a savings plan with an equivalent amount provided by the government. However, the government share would only be available to the saver if the farm business is transferred to a new owner under certain conditions, guaranteeing the maintenance of a viable operation. We are convinced that these concrete measures would not only help stabilize the agricultural sector, but also ensure the vitality of our rural regions for decades to come. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Caron. Now we will move on to Mr. Beauvais for 5 minutes. Hello. Thank you, everyone. To the members of the committee, thank you for having us. My name is David Beauvais. I am a cattle farmer in Magog in the Estrie region. I started my business in 2019. I am with Véronique Simard-Brochu, who is the executive director of the Fédération de la Relève Agricole du Québec. I am the president. We have over 2,000 members across various regions and productions across Quebec. And they adhere to the organization voluntarily. There are many numbers and a lot of data about the new generation of farmers in Quebec. Here's what's interesting to highlight. Nearly half, or 44% of farm relief workers have to work outside the home, largely for, or another job rather, largely for financial reasons. 55% enter the profession via family transfer, and around 35% start their own businesses. In Quebec, we have one of the highest rates of family transfers, so 30% compared to 24% with the rest of Canada. The succession planning is very concerning to us. Many farms don't have a succession plan in place. Others have noted that in Quebec, we have a resource for land banks called Artère. They match the farmers with the new generation. This project is underfunded. There is a real lack of resources. I do think that this is something that is quite concerning. On the fiduciary front, there has been a lot of progress made with C-208. It is a very important bill for us, but as previously mentioned, more progress could be made with regards to extended family, nephews, nieces, and so on, who are not currently admissible to receive the farm transfers. It is more and more common for example, there to be a larger family than it was before that might want to take on the family business. We also think it might be interesting to have a financial incentive, for example, when you buy a first land. For the first new generation of farmers, it could be very interesting. So tax incentive for first farmland purchase is to be considered. Some farmers also need the increase in the value of the farm in order to retire. So we're considering putting in advantages of an RRSP type in order to relieve the burden on these farmers. And this way, the land fund is not their only retirement plan. In Quebec, there's a diversity of businesses due to various different products and different types of businesses. We are a lot more resilient than other provinces. And if there are weather events, we happen to be more resilient also if there's any problems with the international market. We need more programs to help farmers when they find themselves in vulnerable situations. There can't just be one model. Thank you very much.
Beaucoup.
Thank you.
Miss Graham. Sorry, it's not Miss Graham. Miss Garahan. I apologize. I had a quick note at my quick glance at my sheet, and I got that wrong on the introduction. But Miss Garahan, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you for the invitation. Just Food has been the regional backbone organization in the Ottawa region, working on both food and farming issues for almost 22 years now, including supporting new entrants. When I speak of regional today, I am referring to sub-provincial, sub-territorial, regional level. We've identified 5 groups of new entrants, and the main focus of this committee so far has been the intra-family transfer, as what is most commonly referred to as succession. We strongly echo the requests and recommendations made by our colleagues to better support transition across families. But today I draw your attention to the remaining 4 groups of new farm entrants, each category coming with different compounded challenges. I will provide a more detailed written submission and invite further exploration across the networks working on these issues nationally, or coast, including Food Communities Network and Common Ground Network. So first, in acknowledgement of the dual governance on these lands, we must center new Indigenous entrants into food harvesting, fishing, and agriculture businesses, and note there remain outstanding land and treaty issues related to land access, in addition to environmental concerns on lands and waters that are a priority to be addressed in order that these new entrants can successfully run their businesses. Second are rural and urban young people who do not have a farm in their family. Then we have second careerists, often identified as being under 30, sometimes under 40, who also do not have a farm in their family. And the fourth are new Canadians, with a majority of those interested bringing substantial agriculture experience with a need to support to transition into a new climate, soil conditions, markets, food preferences, and sometimes languages. Those temporary foreign workers on farms seeking a pathway to citizenship are also included in this last category. So given that, there are 5 things the federal government can immediately take action on that would make a sincere difference. First, protecting food lands. Financial inability to purchase land is the single most pressing problem for most of the new entrant categories. Unregulated investment into farmland, both domestic and foreign, has helped drive prices well beyond what farming can support as a business. Retiring farmers without in-family successors have naturally been inclined to sell to the highest bidder. So in today's world, we run the real risk that farmers become tenants of wealthy, non-farming landowners with no opportunity to participate in equity growth, no ability to raise funds with land as a collateral for capitalizing their businesses. So we request tax and investment rules need to become uniform across the country. Second, many of the financial mechanisms being asked to support intra-family transfers need to be equally extended to third-party transfers for genuine new farm entrants, given the high percentage of family farms today with no successor. Third, we need legal structures to support what is being innovated and working for new entrants on the ground. So one strong example comes from the network of community farms being established coast to coast to coast. Just Food established a 150-acre community farm within your National Capital Commission here 12 years ago as one such model of nonprofit management of shared land, shared equipment to support both independent for-profit farm business startups and nonprofit food production for community food security. Recent years have seen the growth of diverse models, including community farms, cooperatives, farm condominiums, grazing commons, family farmers who want to donate their farm to support new entrants through community land trusts, and finally, community economic development investment funds. So we need to expand the legal and business models on both sides of this relationship for successful transfers. Fourth, we need federal support for regional local markets. There has been a disproportionate government investment in support of large operations and export commodities that isn't balanced yet with production for local markets, coming from small and medium-sized farms, which is of majority interest to the new entrants across the 4 categories that I'm talking about today. So, for example, the CFIA's definition of local is an example of federal policy that has hindered rather than served to support regionally focused businesses. Viable farm businesses are needed in order for viable intergenerational transfer of farmland. Overall, federal-provincial agreements need to prioritize financial support for both new entrants and for the organizations providing the on-the-ground, regionally adapted resources, education, and business tools needed in order for this massive intergenerational land transfer that's underway to support today's diversity of new entrants. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Finalement, Monsieur.
Now, moving on to Mr. Dion for 5 minutes, please. Hello. Welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Louise Dion. I'm the General Manager of the Centre de référence en agriculture et agroalimentaire du Québec. Our mission is to produce, assemble, and adapt knowledge and ensure its transfer for the evolution of practices in the agricultural and agri-food sector. Among other services, we produce guides, technical leaflets, webinars, videos, events, and any other product that enables us to reach our agricultural clientele. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce you to l'Artère. It is a matchmaking service coordinated by the Centre de référence en agriculture et agroalimentaire du Québec. L'Artère's goal is to accompany and match unrelated aspiring farmers with agricultural producers or landowners with agricultural assets for sale or lease. We also support farm transfers in close collaboration with transfer advisors. Artère was launched in March 2018 after many months of work between several partners in the agricultural community. The service is currently offered in some 50 regional county municipalities, representing around half of Quebec's agricultural territory. Territories can choose whether or not to join l'Artère. Membership of the service has been gradual. Some regions have been benefiting from l'Artère for over 6 years, while others have only been offering the service to their population for 3 to 4 years. Before a match is made, our candidates go through a rigorous qualification process. Matchmaking agents support candidates in their reflection and in identifying their needs. They refer them to the appropriate specialists who work with the farm, such as management consultants, notaries, accountants, tax specialists, and so on. When candidates and their projects are sufficiently prepared, they can be put in touch with another candidate, and the selection process is carried out by the networking agents who read the applications, discuss them with each other, and assess the chances of success of potential matches. Since the beginning of l'Artère, our network agents have accompanied 1,841 aspiring farmers and 1,632 landowners, including 914 agricultural producers. In 6 years, 239 agreements have been reached between an aspiring farmer and a landowner registered in our database who have benefited from the support of a networking agent. In addition, 306 aspiring farmers and 290 owners who received support but found a solution to their needs outside our database. Our 239 completed matches break down into 132 rentals, 44 sales, 41 transfers, and 12 partnerships. More than 25 production sectors are represented, and the main production sectors are market garden production and milk production, for example. L'Artère is a service appreciated and recognized as essential by all players in Quebec's agricultural community. The expertise developed by L'Artère contributes to the economic growth of rural communities. Faced with the immense challenges of young farmers and farm startups, l'Artère is an essential tool for linking a transfer with a potential transferee, thereby increasing the chances of keeping farm businesses in operation and stimulating the vitality of the region's occupation. And despite l'Artère's good results and the interest shown in the service by local authorities, the organization faces challenges that limit its development and the achievement of results that contribute more to the vitality of Quebec agriculture and rural regions. Over the past year, we have laid the foundations of a new business model for l'Artère to ensure its long-term future. The areas of development we wish to pursue are access to service throughout Quebec's agricultural territory, raising awareness among potential sellers several years before the decision to withdraw from agriculture, and the possibility of making the service available in other provinces interested in supporting agricultural settlement. To this end, we have collaborated with and support the efforts of young agrarians in BC, or in British Columbia, rather. And so BC Land Matching, a service to help find the right land for your business, matches farmers with aspiring farmers. Thank you very much. And I hope that we will be able to find adequate funding for all organizations in every province that wants to match farmers with the new generation. This will help to popularize the tool, which seeks to match transferees with transfers. Thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any question you may have. It's a pleasure for us too, Mr. Dion. Before beginning the question period, I would like to highlight that Mr. Caron and Mr. Beauvais, there seems to be an issue with your sound. So try to be very clear with your responses and speak slowly, because there seems to be a sound quality issue for the interpreters.
So, we'll go forward from there. Thank you so much, colleagues. We've got an hour here, so I plan to go to 6:15, maybe a little bit less. It would be around 50 minutes if everything goes according to plan. So I'm going to start with the Conservatives. I assume Mr. Barlow up to 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And before I start, I would just like to welcome our colleague, Mr. Lehoux. Nous pensons à vous et votre.
You are in our thoughts, and so is your family.
Miss you and hope everything is well at home. Mr. Chaffee, thank you very much for coming. It's good to see you again. And I found it interesting in your comment that your son is here also lobbying on the Hill today with the cattle feeders, I think you said. And we heard from a young farm family who was here last week the impact of the capital gains inclusion rate change has on their plans to pass on that family operation to the next generation. Can you just maybe articulate, certainly every farmer I've spoken to this summer since this was announced in the budget has said this is an impact to this is throwing a wrench in their planning, it's a stressor, it's impacted their mental health. Can you talk about the experience that you're having with your son and the impact that the capital gains inclusion rate change may have on your plans?
Hey, thanks for the question. And by coincidence, my accountant is here. So, and yeah, my son Evan and I have 2 boys full time at home as well with myself and my brother, which we've formed a corporation in helping transfer ownership down the road. Yeah, and it's something that you work on each year. But when all of a sudden you get these new tax rules thrown upon you, it's something where you spend a lot of time, a lot of money with accountants and lawyers making sure you have things right, because running a farm, you have all that investment and your retirement is also in there as well. It's not like anything you make, you invest back in the farm. And I'll give you one example within my family. When my grandpa got out of farming, he used the intergenerational transfer to transfer land to my father and myself. His brother, my great uncle, he transferred land to my father, so he missed out on that intergenerational tax exemption. My grandpa had a great retirement. He was able to move to town, build a new house, enjoy retirement. My great uncle moved to town, lived in an old house, and basically retired eating soda biscuits and living on tea leaves. Like it was a disgrace. And it's quite coincident. Like a lot of the testimony here today, we need to broaden that scope, where there's a lot of farm businesses now that have uncles working with nephews and so on. And that, my feeling, that needs to be adopted.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Mr. Melvin, thank you for being here from Nova Scotia. And you have the incredible benefit of having the chair of the Ag Committee as your member of Parliament. But we had the Minister of Agriculture here, and my colleague, Mr. Steinley, asked him, did you know anything about the capital gains inclusion rate change being in the budget? And he said no, he had no idea that it was there. And I find that troublesome that the Minister of Agriculture does not know that a pillar of the budget and its impact on agriculture wasn't included in the budget. Have you had consultations with your current member of Parliament on the impact the capital gains inclusion rate will have on Nova Scotia producers?
I haven't directly in the recent months. We've been in the middle of the farming season and time flies this time of year. That being said, I think that while that's, one challenge that we're facing, this, additional hurdles within the tax code are always burdensome for anyone. We're facing many challenges from many different perspectives within succession in Nova Scotia. So this is, an added challenge. But and to answer your question, no, I haven't had a conversation with him directly.
So you talked about, Mr. Melvin, the impact, how hard it is finding that successor to take over that family farm, and raising increased tax burden is one of those reasons. So I'm assuming that the carbon tax, which is going to be increased again on April 1st, and this capital gains inclusion rate change is another potentially a 30% tax hike on a farm family. Those 2 tax hikes alone, I would think, is making it that much more difficult to find that younger generation that sees agriculture as a viable career.
Certainly, I would say that you're right. Every cost is an additional burden in a system and a model where we're very capital intensive and very low margin. That being said, it's we're in Nova Scotia. We're legal and regulatory hurdles are a challenge that our members identify, but we also have those financial challenges outside the business risk management challenges, the climatic events that are they're almost burying some of us, quite honestly. So it's another hurdle, but there's a bigger picture here that I think we have to tackle, certainly.
Thanks. I wanted to switch to Ms. Foster. It's great that you're here. And I was actually visiting with one of your members yesterday, the Dolman family outside of Renfrew, Ontario, that is going through a similar transition. But her grandmother was trying to make a decision on whether to sell the family farm, but the capital gains inclusion rate, and they can't make a decision because they don't know what it is. When you talked about the Bear Trust, the underused housing tax, all of these things that the government kind of had to back off on because they were brought in at the last minute and no one knew what to do with them. And now you have a capital gains inclusion rate change where the legislation hasn't even been tabled 6 months after the deadline. What impact is this having on your members with OFA, but certainly your clients?
So, unfortunately, we're at time. Mr. Barrow, you didn't manage it quite well. We're right up against 6, but I know you'll have another chance. Ms. Foster, if you want to give a 30-second response, I'll give that out of respect to you.
As I alluded to in my points that I made, the challenge is often not so much the rules themselves, but the ability to deal with them. So it's no fun for the accountants either, I can tell you that. It's certainly frustrating for our clients, though. When there's changes to be made, we devote a lot of time as accountants to understanding the changes, and then it is frustrating to find that we've had to backpedal on them.
Mr. Drouin, over to you for up to 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I'm just going to advise you that I'm going to be sharing my time with you, Mr. Chair, in case you didn't know. My first question would be to Ms. Foster. You've mentioned, I believe it was you that said Growing Forward 2 had some dollars for succession in its programs. Just despite that, though, we're still facing, depending on which statistics you're looking at, we're still seeing farmers and small businesses as well having an 8 to 12% succession planning. What do you think is the issue in terms of I'd say the grand majority of small businesses and farmers not adopting a succession plan? Or how do we raise the profile and ensure that people sign in and raise the importance of having a succession plan?
I think a lot do have one. They've not formalized it. It's in their heads. There's intentions of what it's going to be. Formalizing it is often something small business owners don't care to do. They don't like paperwork. They'd rather be running their businesses or their farms. So I think that's the first problem. I did find the Growing Forward, as I said, I think it did encourage people to do things sooner and put some thought to it sooner. So something like that, again, I think would be helpful. It provided some dollars, and I think was certainly beneficial.
Okay, but that didn't necessarily move the needle. We're still, 20 years ago, we were still at 10% of farmers and small businesses still having only 10% of succession planning, right? So, and that's CFIB's own numbers. I'm quoting their numbers, but there has to be something more that we need to do in order for greater adoptions of succession plan, because that measure alone, it may have motivated more people, but still not enough to have a significant impact. So when policymakers are looking at this, they're saying, well, that particular program didn't necessarily have a major impact didn't move the needle far enough. So there has to be something else that we can do, I believe. So if you have any recommendations on that, I'd love to hear it.
I can't think of anything specific, but I think it does come back to the fact that, there's a lot of succession planning to be done and not necessarily enough qualified people to do it, given the complexities and the changing environment as well. So I think simplifying things would be helpful, and I do think having funding available is helpful.
Okay, thank you. Ma prochaine question serait pour Monsieur Di.
Next question is for Mr. Zia, and I find the concept behind l'Artère very interesting. Do you have any data, for example, since you are a matchmaker, if you will? I've been on your website, and I think it's all very interesting. You say that you are lacking funding in order to make additional progress. Is that correct? Right now, the funding works through various regions with agreements we have in various sectors. So it's very different from one place to another, and so it's very difficult to have an even service across the Quebec territory. That's why we need larger support and have a provincial agreement in order to make sure that we have proper funding and guarantee service everywhere across Quebec, no matter what municipality. And that way we can have quality service. This way we can also promote our services better. It's too late to look for farmers who want to take on the transfer 6 months after someone retires. So we want to make sure that these decisions are made in advance. We want the transfer to move provincially so we can have a province-wide service. The service is managed by partners locally.
Alan, I want to start with you, if I could. Great to see you. Thank you for the work that you and Carolyn and the entire board of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture do for advocacy in our province. You talked about land banks, which we heard from other witnesses. I think it's important. But I want to talk about a financial tool, because when I have conversations, whether it be with yourself or other farmers at home or across the country, it seems that the math around the capital assets, whether it be land, which you rightfully highlighted, but also just equipment, machinery, buildings, it is far outpacing kind of the operational income to support the debt that you have to take on to properly pay out the farmer who's retiring. Do you think that there are some existing tools that the government at the federal level could enhance, whether it be Canadian Agriculture Loan Act or other types of elements, that we can try to have lower cost financing to help smooth that transition? Is that a legitimate goal that we should be working on as parliamentarians?
Thank you for the question. I think that, anything that reduces cost to the new entrant, so in this case, minimizing or reducing interest costs, as you noted, would be a benefit. And there are some programs from various lenders, provincial lenders and federal lenders, FCC, for example, that do encourage that through reduced rates. But so when we look at the whole basket of challenges within as new entrants trying to get into the industry, interest cost is a significant burden. We have a significant borrowing cost at that forefront when we take on a new farm. But there's all those other financial challenges as well. So we have to kind of look at that whole basket at the end of the day.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Just another 30 seconds here. I'll say Mr. Barlow talked about costs on farm and carbon pricing. I do hope that his party will allow C234 to actually come to a vote. I know we've talked about that before, Alan. I hear some here in the room. Unfortunate that it has taken this long and we're still not actually at a vote. We've talked about this, what it means to farmers. The Conservatives like to single it in the House, but we actually got to be able to get there. So hopefully, Mr. Barlow, with your help, we can let the member from Bruce-Huron come forward and we can all rejoice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Monsieur Parent, over to you for 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
6 minutes, Mr. Perron. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all of the witnesses for being here today. Unfortunately, you'll understand that we don't have time to ask questions to each and every one of you. I'm very sorry about that. It's one of the downsides of this job. Before forgetting, I would like to invite every one of you to submit some requests. For example, if you think that we haven't gone deep enough into certain topics, if you feel like you haven't had the opportunity to make specific recommendations, please submit them in written form to the committee so that we can make proper recommendations to the government, because that is the point of what we're doing here today. Mr. Caron, I will start with you. It's always a pleasure to see you, even if you are just on screen. You made many recommendations for the new generation of farmers and for the value of land. Can you please briefly explain what your main requests are for the new generation to have access to land? Thank you for the question. Maybe Mr. Tuka can add something, or Mr. Saint-Roch can add to what I'll say. For agriculture, we need a lot of capitalization. An investment of $8 will make $1 of profit. So this will be directly impacted. So today we were presenting some elements, whether they be funds or trust funds, for example, in order to relieve that burden. I'll let Mr. Saint-Roch continue on what I have to say. Yes, hello everyone. Other witnesses mentioned this. I'd like to remind you that there is a possibility of transferring or expanding the rules of transfers to nephews and nieces in the case of farms, and more businesses or farms are large. Many farmers, or rather, there are many siblings that are taking care of these farms. It's very important what you're saying. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time. Isn't there something that had already started? Had the government not made promises to fix this issue of, transferring to nephews and nieces? How come it hasn't been resolved yet? I couldn't tell you. It is something that we've been asking for a number of years. Other witnesses made the same comment. When it comes to the tax rules, it constricts what can be transferred to nephews and nieces when there are transactions, for example, and what you claim in your taxes. Even if, for example, the uncle can transfer a part of their farm through a donation so that the farm continues on without having a fiduciary burden, it isn't possible. That is an additional fiduciary burden, and it means that the transfers are restricted. One of the parents or, the siblings that doesn't have another generation to transfer to will want to transfer to their nephew or niece, but there are some really large amounts of money that are lost, that wouldn't be lost if it's transferred from a parent to a child. And that's because these farms have become group farms, if you will. I'd like to hear what the Fédération de la Relève Agricole du Québec have to say about that. Mr. Beauvais or Ms. Simard-Brochu? Thank you for the question. As mentioned earlier, many members have bigger farms. There are nephews and nieces who need that exoneration from taxes. Indeed, some progress has been made with C-208, but there is still some progress to be made. That is one of the things that the government can do at the tax level. They can help financially for youth to be able to access those lands. Mr. Dion, you'll have 30 seconds to respond. You said you don't have enough funding, but if I've understood correctly, right now the Quebec province is funding you, and there's some funding coming from various regions. Do you think that the federal government can transfer funds in order to establish a fund like yours? Is that correct? There are various agreements in the sector, and the coordination is a payment that comes from our financial partners in the regions and a little bit from the MAPAC. So indeed, the idea is to complete the provincial funding in order to make sure that we can establish the program everywhere. We also want to make sure that other provinces have access to this kind of program. They've expressed that interest. There is the possibility of perhaps working with other provinces and establishing this service in other provinces.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll echo my colleagues in saying thank you to all the witnesses for help guide us through. In the part of the country that I live on, Vancouver Island, we're being faced by significant land price issues. Where I live in the Cowichan Valley, I live very close to the agricultural land reserve, and you can certainly see the land values increasing significantly year after year. Mr. Melvin, maybe I'll start with you on the other side of the country. I think I heard in your opening statement you say that 8% of farmers have a succession plan, but that 62% of Nova Scotia farms are set to be transferred in the next decade. So there's obviously quite a discrepancy between those numbers. Could you just maybe reiterate, like why is it that when you've got most farms are set to be transferred in the next decade, why is it that so many farmers are not putting this planning into place? Is it because they are so overwhelmed with the amount of work that they're having to do, or there is no heir apparent? We just want to have some additional information so that maybe we can provide some good guidance to the government on this.
Sure. Thank you for the question on that. And so we conducted a survey, as I noted, last winter, 2024. And in Nova Scotia, I think it's fairly reflective of federally, we have about 8% with a detailed succession plan. That doesn't mean that the other 92% don't have something on the back of a napkin or they've kicked it around their minds, but that's what's been formalized and a good plan in place. And so as part of that survey, we had results trying to identify barriers and what those might be. And the biggest barrier is the financial challenges. So again, going back to the risk profile of agriculture is outstripping the returns that we can get on our fairly low margins, high volume systems that we're on now. Another hot button was finding a successor. So if you don't have a child or a niece or nephew that's worked in the business and is interested, it's challenging to find somebody as a new entrant to come in and take over that farm. And then lastly, legal and regulatory hurdles were the other top item identified. So the constant evolution of accounting, taxation rules, legal changes as they evolve as well, were seen as the other challenge, and just getting that succession plan in place.
And we know around this table for sure that often farmers are land rich and cash poor. Like they really do put all of the money that they make back into their operations, and we see that from coast to coast to coast. I know personally, I've certainly seen investment firms of various makes and models offering investment opportunities in farmland, and that is something I've seen grow over the last number of years. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, I think agriculture operates in a very unique space, and I hear from all the witnesses around the table saying that when it comes to these capital gains rules changes, farming needs to be treated in a special category. But what about the investment firms that are using agricultural land as an investment vehicle? Like, do you have a position on how we should differentiate between the succession planning amongst immediate and extended family and also these investment firms that are investing in farmland for a return?
Yeah, I would say you have to look at it from the family farm perspective or the small business perspective. Within the tax code, there's small business and there's a large corp. And so I expect that oftentimes those investment vehicles or investment firms would be considered large corps and kind of treated differently even within regular taxation. So I would suggest that it would have to focus in on, the family businesses, the ones that are ingrained in the rural fabric of Canada and drive that economic success and resiliency that we have.
Thank you. Ms. Garahan, maybe I'll turn to you because I've certainly been interested in how, in my own backyard, how new entrants into agriculture manage with the astronomically high prices in land. And I know there are some unique relationships being set up in BC where, the BC Young Agrarians are trying to set up those relationships between farmers who have the land but may not have the wherewithal to continue farming with the same intensity that they once did. But we have productive farmland not being used, so they want to allow someone who's got the will to get in there and start farming it. I know in some of these, the financial arrangements that have been put into place, it may allow for farmers to lease their lands to these new entrants. Like, do we have to be careful when we're looking at these new financial relationships in the context of these capital gains changes? Like anything you want to guide our committee through on that?
I'm able to answer. I think that, as mentioned, I do think that Young Agrarians is a good example. There's examples right across coast, some presented here, but there's many of on-the-ground models, both business and structures, that allow for independent farm businesses to either work on owned land, but I like to see that if there's a transition in place, because then you become a tenant farmer in the long term. I think there can be some benefits. We've seen really great examples of existing farmers allowing young farmers to get started, which allows them to build up a market, build up their skills, build up their ability to then financialize their own operation elsewhere. So I think there's seen successes on that. I do think we have to be a bit careful, and we need to look for equity models that allow new
Build
entrants.
up their equity. Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, we're at time. Maintenant, Monsieur Gourde, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît. Allez-y, s'il vous plaît.
5 minutes to Mr. Jacques Gourde, please. Inaudible. Mr. Beauvais, you have all of our admiration because you're facing very many challenges. You represent more than 1% of the Canadian population, and you produce 7% of the GDP in Canada. No other sector with so few people involved participate to such a large scope in the Canadian economy. So we do support you. C208 is very important, and it's important to transfer farms to our nephews and nieces. I am a farmer. I have grandchildren, and I am participating in this succession plan as well. My daughter's children come to the farm, and maybe one of them is going to want to take part at some point. I want to talk about the patient's capital. Right now, landowners still own that capital, and it's quite complicated. Canadian society is not participating to this capital. There's instead of investing in the industrial sector, maybe we can help the future generations by participating in the patient capital. Agriculture is a pillar of the economy, but working the land is also culture. It's more than just the economy. Indeed, with regards to the patient capital, this is something we've been asking for years. It's not a risky thing to invest in agriculture. The landowner is not going to leave and go to a different country. The land will stay here. So, of course, we are asking to be able to make capital at low and stable rates in order to be able to reinvest in our communities. Mr. Beauvais, thank you. Mr. Caron, you talked about trusts. How can we bring the patient capital to our new generations so that we don't there's too many people who are leaving because of a lack of patient capital. Thank you for the question. The patient capital that is put in place can help through a different type of a system, and I think that's what we have to put the emphasis on. We are talking about what Canadians are eating. That is really the foundation. Only 6.2% of the Canadian land is what is farmland. And so we have to invest in the patient capital in order to pass on that land to young people who want to participate in agriculture. 22% have a succession plan, but 78% don't. So, thank you. You have solidarity with the agricultural sector. Should that be extended to all of the Quebec population to send the message that we must invest in the patient capital for our future? Absolutely. It is absolutely essential, whether it be in Quebec or other provinces. I think our future is at risk, and Canada's food security and autonomy is also at risk. Do you think that all Quebecers should have some sort of pride in the fact that they have money that can be invested in Canadian and Quebec agriculture? I think this is a much larger project societally, and I think that people are realizing that we are feeding them, but we are also participating in fighting against climate change. So yes, I do think that we can, suggest that kind of thing to Canadians. Thank you very much.
We'll turn over to Mr. Lewis for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to let all our witnesses know we appreciate them being here today on the study for intergenerational transfer of farms. But I wanted to start with a statement that farmland itself is a finite resource, which is essential for food production. It's essential for sustainability. It's essential for our rural economies. And I'll focus on Ontario. Right now, only 5% of Ontario's landmass is suitable for agriculture. So we need to protect farmland, and we need to better use other land for development, both for housing and for economic development. Being from Wellington, Ms. Foster, maybe I'd start by mentioning a local farmland issue in Waterloo region where I'm from. We've heard from many constituents who are concerned right now about expropriation of farmland for industrial use in the township of Wilmot in my riding of Kitchener-Conestoga, and I share their concerns. I believe that we can use lower quality lands that have the necessary infrastructure, not prime farmland, which would have much less negative social and environmental impacts. And I agree with the Federation of Agriculture statement, who said we strongly support rural economic development where it does not undermine our precious and finite agricultural resources. So, Ms. Foster, what strategies would you recommend that we could optimize the use of limiting agricultural land, the limited agricultural land we have for both farming and also necessary development? What can we do to make sure we're striking that balance? Are there any policies or any strategies that you can?
I don't feel that's something I'm comfortable in my capacity to speak to.
I could ask the same question then maybe of Mr. Melvin from the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture.
Yeah, I think that from a land preservation perspective, we need to look at putting that control into the hands of the industry. Too often, we rely on municipal jurisdiction and things like that can change with a pretty broad brush. So, having a multi-tooled approach and having the ability to put land banks in place and easements in place and things like that is I think going to help with the long-term security of agricultural land and ultimately our food security.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning land banks, and you did from your opening statement. I think you touched on something that we've got multiple levels of government. You've got municipal governments, possibly regional, provincial, and then federal governments, but all need to work together. So can you expand on land banks, specifically, let's say in Nova Scotia, on how they can protect from development, ensuring that prime agriculture remains available for agriculture use, and maybe even how land banks can also support new farmers or younger farmers who are looking to enter the agriculture sector?
Sure. So I think maybe a few others on the call might be able to, answer the question around the preservation piece. But I think that from a new entrant perspective, the land bank certainly is a good tool, financial tool to take that capital burden and shift it off the balance sheet and off the liability side of a new entrant and the borrowing costs of the new entrant. So, and giving them, there's different models, but giving them ultimately a point in the future where they could potentially purchase and pick up that land equity at a realistic operating value. But from a land protection perspective, there's other tools that can be layered on top. You can layer easements into that land bank to incentivize and things like that. But I think there's some folks from Quebec probably that can answer how their model's working at this time.
Yeah, if anyone wants to weigh in on that, I would appreciate it. And if not, I would direct maybe Ms. Foster. We did hear about the low percentage of farmers who have that written succession plan in place. Is there outreach we can do? Can you maybe provide an overview of some of the federal programs that can support that, maybe through Farm Credit Canada, or how can we reach out to more farmers to help incentivize them to do that planning?
I don't think it's a lack of awareness. I know when we talk to our clients, what do you want to know more about? Succession planning is always the top of the line. So I think there's certainly an understanding that it needs to be done. As I said before, I think a lot of times it's presumed or there's intentions, it's not formalized. Certainly, FCC may be one avenue. I mean, they've got their hands, on a lot of producers, so they do a lot of education. Certainly, if there's scope for them to continue to do that, I think that's great. Again, I think just a general security in that if they are putting plans together, that they know that they're going to be able to act on it, because a plan is not going to come to place or come to fruition in a few months or years, really. It's a long-term proposition. So a lot of people in agriculture, my family included, my kids are the 7th generation to farm, so sometimes it's just presumed that that's what's going to happen, and often it does, but not necessarily in the most efficient manner.
Thank you very much. Maintenant, M. Parent, 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Beauvais, I will ask you another question. You spoke about financial incentives when you buy your first land, and Mr. Gould talked about patient capital. If we were to develop a system where a farmer transfers his farm, would sell his farm at the agronomic value and not at the speculative value in order for it to be just as profitable, because that's the issue right now. Right now, it's impossible to make money when you sell your land. So if they accepted to do that, to sell their land, and there was a pension that was a system that was established, and would compensate that person and would take the land out of that vicious cycle of speculation, and the land would be something that could be sold at agronomic value, but would also allow for the transfer of generation. I think that would be of interest. I would like to hear your thoughts. The interpreter must interrupt service due to the bad quality of sound.
Sont utilisés de manière spéculative, puis c'est quelque chose là, qui c'est pas un modèle. La terre agricole, c'est un coffre d'outils. C'est ce qui nous sert à faire notre production. Il ne faut pas que ça serve
Désolé,
à autre chose.
Monsieur Beauvais.
I'm very sorry. We have an interpretation issue. So.
Again, but I think what we're running into a bit of technical issues. I'm going to try very slowly, Mr. Beauvais. Donc, s'il vous plaît, très lentement.
So just very slowly.
Unfortunately, I guess we're being told by our translating team. I'm sorry, Mr. Beauvais. If you want to finish that response, you can certainly submit it writtenly. But we're being told by our translation team we have to make sure we can operate. So I apologize. I don't know if it's a technical piece or your internet connection. But Monsieur Parent, tu as 45.
You have 45 seconds left, Mr. Perron. That's not a very long time. And so thank you for submitting that in a written format. I would like to extend that invitation to the other witnesses. And same question to Mr. Caron. The interpreter, however, signals that Mr. Caron's sound is not adequate either.
En train de le mentionner, c'est de s'assurer qu'on mette une valeur agronomique à ces terres-là. Mais moi, je pense qu'on a différents programmes ici au Canada, exemple, agri-stabilité, agri-investissement, agri-relance. Je pense qu'il faut être rendu d'avoir un agri-épargne ou un agri-relève qui soit mis en place au niveau fédéral. C'est très urgent d'avoir quelque chose en place rapidement parce qu'on sait qu'on parle de notre année, qu'on parle de la relève agricole et on a des impacts économiques. Alors, donc, il faut être capable de trouver des solutions là, très rapidement.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
For 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Ms. Garahan, I'd like to continue with you because I appreciate that you were focusing your remarks on new entrants, those outside of succession planning. Because I know from personal experience that it takes a significant commitment to jump into farming if your family has no prior experience in it. And we certainly do need those new entrants because in some cases succession planning isn't going to work out. Farmers' children may have other interests, but we still need that productive farmland to continue operation, potentially in new hands. We have heard repeatedly, though, from witnesses not only today but at other times about, when new entrants come into farming, they do look at a lot of the risk associated with going into farming. And certainly, there's not only the commodity prices, the market prices that exist, there's also the input costs, but there's also, of course, increasingly variable climate concerns. When you are speaking to new entrants, what are you hearing from the new entrants about their concerns about the wild variabilities that can exist in farming, and what do they wish to see? Like, for example, what immediately comes to mind is the business risk management programs. Do you have any thoughts on what they're saying to you on how those can be improved?
Yeah, I'd say the big one is, like I mentioned, a lot of new entrants are interested in local markets and diversified commodities, and that type of farming on small and medium farms is not effectively covered on the agri-risk programs. There really needs to be a balanced approach to supporting small and medium diversified farms. That is where new entrants, many of them are wanting to head into, and we just don't have the same type of protections that other commodities do. So it's a really serious issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so like the current crop of business risk management programs are, in your view and in their view, tailored to a very specific type of farming, and it needs to be just a little bit more accessible for those people who have smaller operations which are more diversified?
Smaller and diversified, both, yeah.
Okay, great. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Gourde, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Gould, for a few minutes. Mr. Caron, we were talking about some temporary foreign workers, and of course Canada is taking its time giving the proper permits. Is this a big problem in Quebec? Is Mr. Caron still there? However, the interpreter would like to signal that they must interrupt the service.
Québec, c'est le 1/3 des travailleurs étrangers temporaires qui représentent la main-d'œuvre sur nos entreprises agricoles. Ça est tout le temps un enjeu,
désolé, Monsieur
et un
Caron.
défi.
C'est le même problème de Monsieur Bourvet.
Okay.
Désolé.
I'm very sorry, Mr. Caron. We must interrupt the reply. Please submit in a written format your answers, and I'm very sorry, Mr. Gould. You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. The next question is for the other witnesses. If anybody would like to answer, please go ahead. There are farms that are being dismantled. Some farms are dismantled and sold. Do you think that this is preoccupying because the amount of farmers is getting lower and lower? We need more and more temporary foreign workers to work on farms because Canadians don't seem to want to go on farms. How do we maintain the interest in Canadian agriculture if nobody wants to work in this sector anymore?
I'll take a stab at it to start with. We need better BMR products like the Agri-Stability is broken. I know you spoke to it doesn't work for smaller farms. It doesn't work for diverse farms, whether you're involved in beef and cash crop and one offsets the other. So we definitely need help there. And on the other side, I know it's went around about new entries, interest rates in trying to get that investment into the farming operation. Like new entries, you go to borrow money and they're paying a higher rate than a well-established farm. So that's a deterrent there. And when you're up against low margins, it's almost impossible. But I would turn it over to my other colleagues for response.
I would say very much the same as Jack has said. For new entrants, you know, if you look at the cost of farmland relative to or any capital that's involved in it relative to the return on investment, it's very low. So that certainly is a challenge to look at that business model. I know OFA has done some studies on the cost of farmland relative to the return on investment. And in 2023, I believe it was 47. If you bought a piece of land in Ontario, 47% of the revenue would need to go towards servicing debt. So that's before any of your costs. So certainly that becomes cost prohibitive for new entrants, and for those coming into it in a family situation as well.
I just want to say there are a lot of new entrants. They just can't access the current system. And I think this is the challenge. You have a number of family farms that don't have succession. You have a number of diverse farm entrants who want to farm. They want to commercially farm. We have hundreds even in Ottawa alone who want to farm. They need access to small scale land so that they can start their part-time business and grow into a full-time business, especially near urban populations. They need to have access. So this is not an issue about people don't want to farm. We're at a tipping point right now where what Member Perron said is we need to, and Member Louis said, we have to take agricultural land out of being a commodity, a speculative commodity, and it has to become commensurate with what can be earned from that farmland. And you will find that there are farmers here on these lands that want to take this up.
To the other witnesses, if there's anybody who wants to answer, do you think that there's a bit of an injustice and frustration towards this government that is investing billions, for example, in patient capital, billions that are lost, but you get nothing, or rather peanuts, for the new generation of farmers? They, earn $200 to $300 a week, and do you think that this will have an impact on the long-term viability of agriculture?
You want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, definitely the long term, because I mentioned before in my submission is food security has got to be number one. So the ability to produce food, whether it's on a large scale family farm operation or on a smaller scale, is essential. And Canada, with our global markets, we need to recognize that.
I would just say that I believe that there's a lot of room for small diversified farms, small and medium diversified farms, to make significant income on small parcels of land. And I think that just hasn't been proportionately invested in, and is what consumers are wanting to connect with as well. So I do think that we need to be valuing the broad type of farming to look at what is viable today.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Murray and Ms. Taylor-Roy, who I think are going to split around 5-6 minutes. Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being here and for your testimony and your deep understanding of the challenges of family farms and your proposals. And when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the other businesses that might be rural, capital intensive, equipment intensive, seasonal perhaps, subject to weather and climate change, floods and fires. And that would be things like ecotourism, like forestry operations, fisheries. And so my My question really is, and so there would be the similar type of family ownership in some of those businesses and succession issues. So would you be advocating that any solutions that you're bringing forward for the family farm transition and succession should be applied also to other businesses that have some common elements to the farming? The farming challenges, I would say.
I can take a run at it. I think the one difference in agriculture, all of those things are capital intensive. I think comes back to the margins are sometimes lower in agriculture than some of those others. But a lot of the same, as you said, a lot of the same theories could apply. I think we need to. I don't think it's wrong to consider it if it's, in the interest of preserving family businesses. One thing I would add, though, is a lot of farms have diversified, too. So, we've got farms with, an on-farm grain elevator or agritourism or some other piece. So that's always a challenge because sometimes those actions on a farm can put them offside of the farm taxation rules as well. So that's something to be considered.
Mr. Chaffee, Mr. Dion.
Yeah, well, the only thing I would add is normally on a farming operation, any profit you make, if there is profit there, it's all invested back within the farm, where a lot of small businesses would be taking a wage out of that and as well building a retirement fund. Not all, but as Coralie said, like the margins are so tight within farming that a lot of times there just isn't that capital to put away for investment for retirement. So everything ends up, your investment is your farm. And when you got to give up a huge portion of that on your sale to the government and just leaves you, a lot of farmers could be left in poverty after building their empire throughout their life.
Okay, Monsieur Dion.
Ouais, très rapide.
So, very quickly, of course, it's a big challenge. This is why we have to be able to innovate within real estate models at the agricultural level. And this is why we have to be able to offer other kinds of establishments, whether they are cooperatives, rentals, and so on. Other models do exist, and we have to think outside the box in order to propose different models.
Thank you. Over to my colleague.
Thank you to all our witnesses for being here. It's a really interesting and important issue, how we pass farms on and how we keep farming going in Canada. Mr. Dion and Ms. Garahan, you talked about different models. And looking at the average age of farmers and the need for succession planning, I'm wondering the concept of the family-owned farm and having special treatment for family-owned farms versus other farms. I mean, I look at some family-owned farms that are huge. They're huge corporations, and they're very profitable. In fact, I think the largest 10% of farms in Canada make up 2/3 of the revenue. So the term family-owned farm and using that, do you find that useful still in terms of facilitating the broadest range of people that can possibly keep these farms and ensure that these businesses keep operating?
I would just thank you for that question and emphasize that supporting family farms is critical, and we support our colleagues around this table. But this committee's almost singular focus over time on family farm transition has left a humongous level of new farmers out of the picture. And I think that it has to be a diversified conversation here in order that you meet your targets and support a diversity of new farmers. So I think the definition of family has to change. I think that there has to be the same mechanisms, and I know that's tough, but you can determine a bona fide farmer and have severe penalties if the land is not farmed that prohibitively prevent speculation purchasing. But we need to have the same mechanisms for out of family transfer. That is where we are right now.
Right. Okay. And Mr. Dion?
Si je peux compléter, tantôt, je pense, David.
To add what was said, Mr. Beauvais said 35% of transfers are done through family. So that means 65% are to people who are unrelated, and that's what we are our services aim to help with. And so that would be an advantage. We can't forget this sector. I think there will be more and more of these kinds of transfers in the future.
Very quickly then, there was suggestions made that these, the family transfer, the tax advantages extend to nieces and nephews, to other family members. Do you think it should also then extend to other bona fide farmers who are going to take over and actually farm? So that, we're kind of extending it to larger family. Why do we stop there? Like, why not to immigrants that are coming to the country trying to build a farm?
That's right. It has to go to who the new entrants are, which is a diversified group of people that extend beyond the traditional definition of family. It has to be third-party available.
I just out of curiosity, colleagues, I went on ChatGPT and asked the question if I was seeking to become a new farmer and enter what are the programs, and obviously the Canadian Agricultural Loans Program up to $500,000, and then young farmers loans under FCC. My quick question to Coralie is part of our job here to actually extend the ability to access either very low interest cost debt, or maybe even go even further and not even have it just on have it truly debt-free for a certain portion? Is it going to have to take, in the next 10 years, a major financial type of package between governments, financial institutions to help make that smooth transition, whether or not it's intergenerational or external?
I think that would be great. I definitely think that would be helpful to anyone taking over. As I said in my presentation, often family members have a vendor take back. They've got a promissory note. Invariably, I find the first generation underestimates how much they need to comfortably live their retirement. So, not only is it a struggle sometimes for the new generation coming in, but sometimes the generation going out struggles as well because they've become the banker.
I want to thank all the witnesses. You were very patient, and thank you to my colleagues. I know we had votes, but I thought that was a very productive session. I see Mr. Parent taking a look at me. I do want to close here. I'm going to release our witnesses and thank you on behalf of our colleagues today for providing your testimony. We are coming back Thursday. Monsieur Parent, très rapidement, s'il vous plaît.
Very quickly, Mr. Parent, you did not mention at the very beginning whether or not the tests were done. I know that today was a bit of a particular session, and we did start late, and we did mix up the group. I'd just like to make sure that next time that the tests are done. I don't know what the reason is this time, but we would like things to go more smoothly next time because our time is limited. Mr. Perron, I did forget to explain to the entire group, we always do the sound tests with these witnesses, Mr. Caron and Mr. Beauvais. During the session today, there might have been a connection issue. There was some quality issues. And so it is always, of course, important to follow what our interpreters say, but the tests were done.
Thursday, we're going to go 8:30 to 10. The railroads were not able to make it on Thursday. They have requested November 19th. So what we are going to do is we have 5 witnesses. We're going to do a super panel again, 8:30 to 10. Get a few extra minutes to sleep in Thursday morning. On the 19th, we are going to be doing railroads, Railroad Association of Canada and Transport Canada in one panel for about an hour and 20 minutes, followed by our first crack at the can on the CBAM study where our analysts are preparing. So that'll be that's our agenda. We'll see you on Thursday. Meeting adjourned.